Okay, so here we're retrieving a particular user, right? Because I know their ID, right? And right now we're printing it to the console. But more typically, we would like to be able to do is to populate a form, right? So that users could edit that user, right? Or enter more information, more profile information. So here you might have an input field that might include the username. So this might be a placeholder username. And the ID is also username. Okay, and perhaps I'm not going to do the password. We'll have maybe an input field where you have you have maybe the first name, and maybe another input field where you have here a last name. And just because we're short on time, I'm just going to use breaks. Right, but you wouldn't use breaks, right? You would use divs or other ways that you would break it up, right? All right, so what we want to do is retrieve that information from the server, and we want to populate this form, okay? So notice that we have the profile, we have those fields. At least I have that username. I don't know if I have the first name and last name. Probably not, okay? So at least I'll try to populate that username. So let's do that. We have the username right here. We are retrieving it from the server. So let's populate that. So to do that, we'll need Jquery, right? So let's grab the Jquery CDN, right? And in the controller, right, we'll grab placeholders that will bind to the DOM, right? So we'll say var username, we'll have var first name, and same thing with last name. Okay, and we will bind them right here. We'll say we'll grab the username, will be $, and then hash username, and then same thing with the other two. But this will be first name. This will be a last name. This will be first name, and this will be last name. All right, so we grab them and we have a map to the DOM, right? So what do we want to do here? Now that we have the user object right here, what we want to do is actually render it, right? So what we'll do is that instead of printing out to the console, we're going to pass it to a function called render user, right? So we'll say render user. And that function is going to receive the user object that is being passed in from the then. Right, that comes from the server, correct? And just to make sure, let's do a console right here. Just make sure that we have our user right here. Yeah, okay, so that console, right, is being displayed in that render user. So we do have it, okay? Well, now in here, we can, instead of just printing it to the console, we can use our bound variables to populate them, right? We can say username, right, value. This reads the value from the input field. Right? Instead, if you provide a value here, instead it writes to the input field. You see that? All right, this is a very common syntax in JavaScript. They'll use the same name of the function as a setter and a getter. It's very, very common. In Java, typically you have a function called set, first name, and then get first name. Yes, for read and write. In JavaScript, it's very common to use the same function for both operations. If you don't provide any arguments, typically it behaves as a read operator. But if you provide an argument, it typically behaves as a write operator. Make sense? So if you do here user.username, okay, that writes to the input field. So let's try it. Okay, notice that it updates our Alice, and that's from the server, right? That's data that comes from the server. Right? We're populating the field. We would also do all the other ones, right? First name, even though we don't have any value, right? First name and last name, right? And the first name. And we know that these are nulls right now, right? So it won't populate anything. It'll just leave them blank, right? But they're ready if we want to actually populate them. For instance, if we provide here an input button, a button that says update, so maybe this is the update button, we would like to update. Okay, we would like to read those input fields and then send a put request to the server to update this, right? And we'll do that next.